Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks for joining us at the family table. We have conversations that shape the way we parent, and I hope it shapes the way you parent.
That's right. So again, as we've said before, we just love the opportunity to have conversations with people who have parented ahead of us, because that experience, while they might not be saints, and I'm sure actually
I think they might be saints, actually,
but a common
honestly.
theme has been that everybody has said, why are you interviewing me?
Yeah, and it's true. Like, you should not. And I'm like, well, we shouldn't be here either, so we're good. We're good.
This session we have Bob and Lori Cavell about forgiveness. What does that look like in families and maintaining family relationships?
Hi, you guys. Welcome. We're so glad you joined us. Can you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, we are Bob and Lori Cavell, and we have 4 children. We've been married 30 years, and our kids are 27, 25, 22, and 20. So we have 2 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and we love it. We love being grandparents. It's the best.
So you are the exact us, but forward, right? Girl and 3 boys. We call triple threat at the end.
Yep.
And are yours all 2 years apart as well?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so exactly. You are like us, but do you guys want to go back to our stage?
No.
That's right.
No!
I don't even remember that stage.
That's good.
6-year-old for the 21-year-old? Is that your youngest?
That crazy.
Yeah.
We look back at that time in our life and we go, how did that all work? And it's such a busy time, and it's wonderful too. You know,
of
each
course.
stage.
We have to remind ourselves
So
that.
fun. So wonderful. Exactly. Try to remind ourselves that.
So Cori and I, a while ago, we actually heard a great saying, came from Andy Stanley and his wife. The idea that when our kids are old enough to choose, we want to parent towards them choosing to be with us. So a lot of that has to do with family dynamic and maintaining relationship, I feel like. But let's be honest.
Not so much the kids living in the basement.
No.
No, we don't want to go that far.
We're not looking for boomerang parenting, but
Exactly.
more like, when they want to come over for dinner, hey, sounds great.
Okay.
But, so relationship, we feel like, is how we can get there, maintaining positive relationship with the kids. But, I mean, let's be honest, we mess up all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And our kids are kids, and they mess up all the time, too. And so would you have advice for us just on what does that look like, maintaining relationship through parenting? Because obviously we still need to be parents and discipline. We need to provide direction. But when we mess up, what do we do? When they mess up, what do we do? When they mess up with each other, maybe. What does that look like? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think from my perspective, it's all about creating clarity and communication and everybody understanding what kind of the rules of engagement are, when they're younger, and then being very, very careful to determine what hills you die on. Let major in majors and minor in minors type of thing, so that you're influencing them with your values and your rules and that kind of stuff, but also recognizing that they're going to mess up along the way, and let it go a little bit and not control those types of things,
So along those lines, I like the term values. We've been coming back to that a lot with the conversations we've been having here. I guess, do you have any thoughts on defining that? We've been working on that. I mean, I hate saying that. Our daughter's 12, and we're just working on figuring out
I gotta say something here, because Cori said something about family meetings earlier when we were talking, and Bob used to call family meetings all the time. It was like,
not just us.
It's a family
it's a family meeting.
I'm sure the kids love coming to those, don't they?
Oh yeah, it was like they scared by the.
What is going on? It's crisis, right? Something must be up. Exactly. It's a big deal.
But it is. It's just a and it turned into a bit of a joke. But as a matter of fact, we've been doing some cleaning out. We're remodeling our house, and I came across some notes from one of those family meetings. And it comes back to those values. What's important about family, your friendships, church and school and after school activities and those types of things, and trying to really establish what's important to everybody in the family, which unfortunately it's not all the same.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, just to circle back with what you were saying, the messing up, that is so much a part of the rhythm of life, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
We're human, right? And so sometimes in these family meetings or even outside of family meetings, we just had to just say, time out, stop, let's talk about this, because clearly there's some hurt feelings or some resentment going on here, or you're holding a grudge. And so talking about how important maintaining good relationships is, that was something that was a regular part of life at our house. And because things don't, you want them to go well, but they don't always go well. And so when they don't, it's like, okay, we got to stop and we have to address it, and we have to talk about forgiveness and showing grace and mercy, and not just about whatever is going on, but about the underneath that. Like, why would we even choose to offer that to one another? And going back to the grace of God for each one of us. And so that was definitely a part of conversations.
Can you give us like a specific situation, or I could give you a specific situation that happened in my house today, and then you could see how you would handle it. But that kind of idea, can you give us maybe elementary school or middle school? What's a situation where
Maybe the idea of forgiveness. And
yeah,
how does
maybe
that
your
play in
boys, I'm sure they
relationships?
always got along, but maybe there was a little conflict between one of your boys, and then how would you navigate that?
Well, we were talking about a memory that we had of our daughter doing something when she had a friend over one night to sort of harass the boys. Actually, that ended up, ended in hurt feelings. And a lot of times the things that would happen just within your family when nobody else is around, it doesn't ruffle feathers. But if there's an outside witness, like the friend that Maddie had over, then it all of a sudden felt very personal and like, ooh, you were trying to, Anyway, so we just had to facilitate a conversation, and it started with us telling our daughter, you can see how much this upset your brother.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about having upset him in that way? And she, of course, felt bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, so there needs to be a conversation. And we really did, from the time our kids were very little, make a habit of asking them to, when they ask forgiveness, to name what they had done. So to say, I'm really sorry that whatever it was, and will you forgive me? And then we really asked them and, insisted that they forgive one another, but with the understanding of why. And again, providing that background of, God has forgiven us, and we've experienced this, and we experience it over and over every time we mess up. And so we want, it is so important that we're willing to do that for others because he's done that for us.
So how important is that idea of having the kids ask for forgiveness? Because I think about with us, our middle boy tends to get in a tiff with the other kids more than any of the other kids.
I don't understand the dynamic. It's very strange.
It happens. He gets ganged up on, or he just goes after all three of the other combined. Anyway, the reality is we do a good job of telling our kids to go apologize. But when you just said coaching them into naming it and asking for forgiveness, I don't know that I've ever asked the kids or modeled a way for the kids to ask for forgiveness. So I guess how important is that on the kid-to-kid relationship? I've never even thought about pushing that idea.
Between us, we were having a disagreement, and this has happened probably a few times, where the apology went something like, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. Not, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. It makes a difference. The way that you say you
I learned that the second week we were married. I didn't have to apologize.
Or the I'm sorry, but if.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got married young, and so we grew up together, and then I feel like we did that in our parenting too, where we learned from our own relationship, and then we wanted very much for our children to not repeat some of the mistakes and have some of the wrong thinking or attitudes that we had around forgiveness and reconciliation and making things right and really wiping the slate clean and moving forward. And Yeah.
Well, we had that situation too, where it always seemed like there was one of them, which happened to be the middle boy of the three, that it was either the two on the outside, there was that always going on. Yeah. We always required, like Lori said, but then we joke about it now. We also made them finish it with a hug. Teach them.
We did.
Which was like, and we even joke about it now. If like we'll be playing games or whatever with the kids, and there'll be still disagreements in their 20s.
Okay, guys.
All right, guys. So, and honestly, it I think becomes a habit. That habit of just humility. Yeah. Of being willing to acknowledge that you're wrong and really going there. So,
I mean, maybe to dig into that even a touch further, when they're little, did you just give them the words to say? I mean, did you just literally just word for word say this?
We literally did.
Until they understood the form
Will
of
you
it?
forgive me for...
Right. And then owning what you did to that other person, and then the other child needing to say, yes, I do forgive you. And then...
Did you ever have a kid say,
I'm sure we did somewhere along the way.
It's happened, that's why I asked.
Of course, because then we have to circle back. It's like, well, maybe you just need a little more time,
space,
and you need a little more space, and then we'll revisit, because you can't, you can force it,
right?
And they can say the words and not mean them, and you don't want to do that, right? Like you want them to really be experiencing that from the heart. But in talking to our kids now that they're older, and a couple of them are starting to parent, right? Yes. It's like, they're asking now, how did that work again? Because, they have their memories of what it was like, but, and saying, as we got older though, then it was just so second nature. Like you want to keep short accounts. You don't want to keep like this list and keep score of how this person has wronged you. And you learn that it's a better way to live, to get that stuff taken care of along the way, rather than having it build up and create long-term resentment or, a pile of things that you're going to all of a sudden unleash on that person and they had no idea, and how that has served them even in their marriages. Totally. So, but it starts when they're young and you're doing that really simple thing. And I think that's a great question, Rich, because we did the whole, help them with their words.
Well, and there's definitely times where they weren't getting it, and it's like, okay, until you do get it, go hang out in your room and so it's not like it always worked out perfectly. You have to parent, and at the end of the day, sometimes hold them to account.
So that's more like sibling to sibling. What about you guys? As you're parenting and you make a mistake, you get angry over something or something happens where then it's like parent to child, and you need to come and apologize. What did that look like? And was that ever hard? Was it ever like, or was it like super easy? And maybe it was easier for one of you or not the other, or, maybe you're both just super grace-filled.
For me, it was always easy because the kids they learned how, I feel like they developed those habits early on and I think we always worked really hard to circle back ourselves, and if we really were wrong, that we would, again, show that humility to them, because it just develops, I think, from our view, trust in the relationship to not always be right, Yeah. So.
Yeah. There were a lot of times when they were little. And, it was, I talk about this all the time. When they were 6, 4, 2, and new, I do not remember a lot of specifics because we were in survival mode. It was just doing the next thing that needed to be done. But I do remember that when it came to certain things and there being any kind of a bad feeling thing going on, we prioritized those things as those are the things you deal with. Right, like that's important. There's little nitpicky things when they're just, kids being kids that sometimes we're in a hurry. We got to get somewhere. We're not going to deal with this right this minute. We'll deal with it later or whatever. Probably once we get everyone strapped in the car and you're a captive audience, we can talk through this. But when it came to like real conflict, I think we prioritized conflict resolution and making sure that we we stopped to address it if we felt like it was weighty enough, because we wanted that to be something that our kids knew was important to us, that we kept our relationships in a good spot as a family. So yeah.
What did that look like going into middle and high school? Was it kind of an innate practice for them because you started early, or were maybe some of them were better than others?
It doesn't make up, though, for developmentally, right? They still are what they are. They're still a preteen. They're still having hormonal fluctuations and dealing with, like, what is happening to my body?
Oh, our boys sometimes will be like,
yes.
like, what is that? I'm like, don't worry, you can get married someday and it won't be too scary.
That's right. You'll know. You will have
You'll
learned.
be glad you had a sister.
Exactly.
That's right. Exactly. So you can't, even all the good habits in the world don't necessarily, you're still going to have to walk through things in those new developmental stages. And so knowing they know each other better as they get older, and they know how to hurt each other.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, they can be more hurtful the older they get because they just know where to go. Yeah.
I have a strong sense of justice, and the nice thing is our kids do too, but man, when they pick on one, three on one,
and I'm like an includer, and so I'm like,
me.
no, you gotta include everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, so when they when three send one away in tears, it's like, oh.
I'm like, and it's usually the one.
Same one. Right.
I struggle not just getting vindictive, and, we got to serve justice
Put
here.
them in their place.
That's right. And,
Exactly.
I guess when anger comes into parenting, whether it's justified or not, because I think sometimes there is justified anger, right? Because there's something that's truly a wrong. Do you have any advice on that? I hit that more than Cori. She's more of a saint than I am, but.
And I'm not a saint. Let's just be very clear.
How about she's more empathetic than I am, so she understands the ramifications better.
A little softer approach.
Yeah.
But just maybe advice on that, because that is a struggle.
I'm probably not the one to give any advice on controlling anger all the time, but yeah, I think it's just something you grow in yourself. I'm the same way. I'm by nature kind of go to worst case scenario, and I'm emotional and passionate and can get loud and those types of things. But I think it comes back to that development of the relationships, and with them knowing that no matter how ticked I get, they know I love them, and showing that you come back around. I think they trust me, even though they know that I mess things up along the way. They trust me that I'm trying to do the right things, and I would say that. Well, I deferred to Lori. As I mature. Our daughter tended more to move towards Lori. The boys reach that point where they maybe kind of don't appreciate the love of a mother. I've said that before, as they should.
I know. Just today at tennis, Luke goes, "Mom, please don't say good job, Luke," because when you say that, everyone looks. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You're only
Right.
7.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm just
trying to
say like, good job. I'm so proud of you. Anyways.
They're like, and we have one boy that loves people acknowledge him, and the other boy, like when they were playing sports when they were little, they just
look at the
so
Who are those people? I don't know.
right. So, but I think it does. It comes back. Developing trust. It's like any other relationship.
Yeah. Have you ever had to let go of control? I feel like it's so hard with parenting. When they're little, you're so in control. We heard a great analogy where if it's 18 years spread.
So when they're 1, they make 1/18 of their decision.
And then
when they're 9,
nine,
they make 9/18.
Oh, yeah.
When they're 17, they're making 17/18.
and then hopefully by 18, you're 18. And I thought, that's a really good metric to use. And sometimes I think I parent now still in that
we're making
control,
17 out of 18.
Right.
controlled, exactly.
Yeah.
And have you ever had to let go of one of your kids or let go of something that you wanted to control, but you just knew you kind of just had to let a circumstance or situation go, and that at some point you got to trust God with your kids, right? But what does that look like, and how is it okay, and is it not okay? Is it scary or whatever? I don't know how you ask it, but
Well, I think we, along the way, whether it's a coach or a teacher or Sunday school or whatever it is, you allow other adults to have authority over your children, and when something comes up, which it always will
Yeah.
at some point, whether it's, their approach to school, their behavior, or whatever, is hopefully putting our kids under the care most of the time of adults that are for them, right? And have communicated expectations clearly, and always trying to support the adult in the conversation with the kid.
One of our kids had a situation where he was frustrated and he called a teacher a name under his breath. This is under his breath.
Okay.
So the teacher was too far away, but another teacher was right behind him. So he got caught. And we didn't make a huge deal about that on the home front because we knew how that teacher called, talked to us and said, this is how I'm going to handle it.
Yeah.
And instead of, I had heard the scenario of what had happened, and instead of calling the teacher to task and saying, well, you realize when you said that and you did that, that was a super frustrating thing for all the kids. And no, it's like, I'm very sorry that my son responded in that way, and I trust you to do what you feel is appropriate in disciplining him, and letting him live with the consequences of that rather than trying to jump in and rescue by all the means that we want to do that for our kids. It's like, it doesn't necessarily serve them well to do that. And so learning and becoming self-aware of the ways that we want to protect our kids and the ways that are appropriate to do that and the ways that are not, that seem helpful but are not truly helpful in the long run.
It's hard though. That is a hard balance, I
is.
feel like.
Yeah.
Encouraging somebody else's authority in your kid's life.
Yeah. We remember, talking to one of our kids about who had essentially asked a young life leader if he could be accountable to him for some things in his life, and things he would not share with us.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, and we, rather than going to that young life leader and say, give us the scoop.
Yeah.
Not that they would.
No, exactly.
But because we want to know what's going on in
Yeah.
our kid's life, it's like, no, that is such a healthy, good thing, and encouraging that and saying, and even because kids are kids and these youth leaders are inundated. They have so many other kids, so encouraging him to, hey, when was the last time you connected with him? Because he, of course, would periodically check in with our son, but to have him, to tell him, hey, you take some initiative with us too. And if it's been a while, reach out to him and see, So we tried in those ways to encourage those relationships. But I think we were really thankful along the way for people who took an interest in our kids. And
I was wondering, I had a friend ask, do you force your kids to go to youth group? And it was an interesting question because when I was a kid, we hosted youth group at our house. I mean, discipleship, and I wouldn't go. I would sit in my room. And he kind of made fun of me. He's like, I can't believe they would be down in your living room and you wouldn't go. And I'm like, sometimes I just didn't feel like going. And it wasn't that I didn't love Jesus, but I just needed some space and some time. And so, would you guys force your kids to go to youth group? No.
Nope. Not starting at about middle school, we didn't force that.
Yep.
Again, we encouraged them to be involved in the things that were going to help them develop spiritually, and and they got to kind of choose if it was Young Life or if it was youth group or whatever. For each of our kids, it looked a little different.
Okay.
I would say with our oldest, she was more engaged in church youth group activities. And then from there, less so. With
it's
the
like
boys.
That youngest, I know. Exactly.
Yeah, and then it was like, and
you need to.
he gravitated more toward the Young Life scene.
Yeah.
But again, with all of it, just really trying to be in touch with where your kids are at spiritually and what is going to keep them connected that way, and not trying to impose that on them.
Totally.
Yeah, because that's what we're trying to figure out how to do is encourage relationship.
Yeah.
Relationship with God for our kids. And so, I mean, what did you guys do on even some of the basics? Bible study, reading the Bible. Did you
pray? Did you have any
family Bible studies where,
or did you just
live
life?
Well, Lori was real involved early on, and then I got involved with Bible study fellowship later on, but the kids all went through the children's program.
Oh, okay.
We always prayed as a family.
Prayer at night.
And honestly, with this COVID thing, this whole online church is kind of opened up some eyes I mean, what does a church look like moving into the future, and what is a programming for kids? Because they certainly need the fellowship part of it.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's going to be, I mean, we talk about it all the time because we kind of feel like we're tweeners where, you know, we have an appreciation for the traditional church and going on Wednesday and Sunday. But clearly see our kids moving towards this more
Online
technology
based.
You
I know we were just saying, do you think church could be like an online, like church, like a straight up, is there, like, could that be our future? Like, would there actually be, like, where maybe we wouldn't meet in buildings and we'd have just an online church? Like, it just, I'm like, are we moving in that direction? I don't
It's
know.
interesting, but not our conversation.
sorry.
No, but that is a conversation that we are having
Yeah.
with our kids
Yeah.
a lot right
And
now
that's good.
as young
Yep.
adults and that kind of thing, and
Totally.
inviting
Yeah.
them to join us when we are watching an online
Yeah,
sermon or
service.
whatever,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So,
Totally.
but I think having had that history with our kids of, you know, praying together at night, encouraging them, asking questions, we honestly, our kids were super involved in sports. We did a lot of dividing and conquering from the time that they were, you know, the oldest was 12 till, you know, and so it was sort of the hit and miss in terms of dinners together as a family. And I know some people that's super central to the way they do life with their family. For us, not so much. We had a lot of car conversations. Yeah. We had, when we did sit down and eat together, we usually tried to have some kind of meaningful conversation based on something one of us was learning or something. We'd ask our kids what they were learning. Like, hey, what do you feel like God is really teaching you right now? And because as they get older, then they get to be more a part of, you know, you want them to take the lead with some of the family conversations around spiritual things. So
That's a great
well,
way
that's
to be
interesting because
intentional,
actually we're kind of calling this series of questions
Yeah.
and conversations
Oh yeah, we didn't tell you.
the family table.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you say that.
Conversations that shape the way
But-
you parent and the way we parent. Yeah.
But I
so-
love the idea, though, too, of using the time you have. So the car conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. My best conversations with the kids have been when it's just me and one. Well, no, not one. For some reason, it doesn't work with one. But when I've got the three boys and me, or just my daughter and me, it seems like great conversations. I think it's because they're captive, you know.
They
But
can't go anywhere. They can't.
yeah, they're not getting out.
So, do you guys have any like last word on parenting or marriage, or just any thoughts? Any final thought? Mic drop.
Well, one, Lori will appreciate this inside joke. Don't ever make one of your boys eat broccoli, no matter what. It will make for one of the worst parenting situations of all time. But so
that's not a do or die thing.
Yeah, in our house it kind of was. It was one of those majoring in one of the minors, maybe for Dad. But no, just I think the biggest thing is you hear over and over again. You know, the time goes so quickly, and you know when you're living it, you have no appreciation for that. And then you get to this, and to how you started it, Rich, is we're grateful where, you know, just last week we had all 4 kids together, 2 of them living in Seattle and 3 grandkids. And that, I mean, it's an amazing thing to aspire to, and then to get on the other side of parenting to be able to have those relationships. But also recognizing that there's other factors that play into that where that can't happen for some people. So time. I mean, it always comes back to
fast.
time. It goes fast, and so don't waste it.
And then I guess for me, I would say just love them and care that they are experiencing the love that you're trying to give them in a way that demonstrates love, if that makes sense. Like, you know, our intent is to show love, but are they experiencing that impact? Yeah. Are they experiencing that we love them unconditionally, where they are, who they are in that moment, and to have lots and lots of those kind of interactions as much as God equips and enables us to do that, to just love them well, and a lot of humility and being willing to ask forgiveness when we blow it, and try to help facilitate that, you know. in them as well with one another. So.
Sounds like broccoli might have been a forgiveness moment.
Yes, yeah. We had to circle back on the broccoli thing, yeah.
It's made for a good story now, but
It's so true, those hills that you want to die, you feel like you need to die on in one moment, and then years later we look back and go, really? That was the thing that we chose to make a big deal of?
Our oldest kids, I just feel, I'm sorry, you're an oldest.
I know.
I feel so bad for
know.
oldest kids. We mess up so many times, and then by the time the next one, I know this.
And then by the youngest, you're like, whatever. Like, you don't have to eat anything. It's fine. You know, you're
We've already been through that fight. We don't need that
Organic,
again.
Take your vitamins, right?
Exactly. Well, thanks you guys for joining us and sharing and being honest. So we appreciate
we
your
love it.
time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for being with us another week. We absolutely love these conversations. They shape the way we parent, and we hope that they shape the way you parent.
Yeah, and I think as we've been trying to encourage every week or every session, continue to do this with other people. Find other people like Bob and Lori have been to us
Yeah.
to have conversations with, people ahead of you, people with you, and then in turn, while you might not feel like you're qualified, if you have kids in high school, man, go talk to those kids who have those people who have kids who are 5.
Yes.
It's a big deal.
exactly. This is better in community. We're made for community. So find someone else to connect with and share life together. So we know we need lots of help, and that's why we're here.
That's right. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.